Sometimes you just need sugar, but sadly I'm not sure what sugar my body needs right now. So we are going to try the sugar of a white chocolate variety, and I will come back to y'all. I'm probably also dehydrated, but you know, more corn. Hey friends, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me discussing the books that I may or may not have purchased and then may or may not just have forgotten to haul. These are basically the books I have purchased or received from June 2020 to March 2021. And surprisingly, it's not that much. So before I get overwhelmed and start forgetting books, let's just get into it. So I'm going to start with my Kindle purchases. So the first book on my list is one that I apparently have forgotten to haul, or I may have hauled. I don't remember anymore, quite frankly. But that is Truth Was by Susan Dennard. This was a popular high fantasy YA novel back in like the early days of BookTube. Everyone loved it, and basically how it was characterized was that it was kind of like Avatar but with witches. You have different kinds of witches, like what the main character right now is a truth witch. That's all I know. That's all I know about the book. No one really elaborated on their descriptions back in the day. So that's all I know, and it's a very popular book, and I got it for free off of Tor. So hopefully I'll get into this sometime this year, but also I'm trying to finish series, so probably won't start it until I finish more series. So that's a thing. The next book is Shadow of Frost by Coco Ma. This was a buddy read with Sarah and I. Another fail, if you guys are not aware of how poorly sometimes Sarah and I choose books for buddy reads. But this is another high YA fantasy that came out, I believe, last year. It follows a young girl who is able to control all these elements because of her powers, and because of her powers, she is probably the only one who can go ahead and stop this kind of monsters going around her kingdom and killing people. Like I said, Sarah and I DNF'd it. I have regrets purchasing the book, but also we all make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are DNFs, and that's okay. The next one is A Taste of Blood Wine by Frida Warrington. This is a buddy read that's currently ongoing with my friend TB and I. This is a historical fantasy set in, I believe, 1918, following young Charlotte who does not fit in with society. She is trying to make herself seem more like most girls of the season, trying to tease her sister and her aunt, but in reality she just wants to hole up in a lab with her dad. That is until she meets the very, very attractive Carl, who may or may not have fangs that may or may not bite into people and may or may not suck their blood. It's all very interesting. I'm like 50% of the way through this book, I believe. I want to finish this book soon, but I'm sure I'll probably finish it as soon as I finish Chain of Iron. And the last Kindle book is Wolf Song by TJ Klune. I genuinely have no idea what this book is about. I'm assuming it's gay werewolf, but I don't know. Sometimes TB throws books at me and goes, this looks interesting, and I'm like, yeah, it does, want a buddy read, and then I like never look up what it's about, and I'm just pleasantly surprised when we start reading the book. Oh, I have one more book that's a Kindle, and that is The Root of Ice and Salt by Jose Luis Zarate. This is a retelling of Dracula's voyage from Transylvania to America, following this captain of this ship who is very, very, very like, he don't like himself very much. It's supposed to be a very gay retelling of that voyage, and I agree. It's very gay, very smutty. Not sure what I was expecting when I agreed to read the book. Pleasantly surprised. Moving on to the books that I physically own, which are a lot. This is going in no particular order because I genuinely have no idea when I bought these books. Go me. But the first book is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Last Olympian. This is the last book in the original Percy Jackson series, following young Percy as he's like, what, 15-ish, 16-ish in this book, trying to save the world and going about it in his own Percy way. If you don't know what the series is about, it's about young Percy who finds out he's a demigod and tries to figure out who his parent is, which I feel like everyone in the world knows who his parent is but him, and having to save the world again and again and again from his very idiotic godly parents. I love this series. I love Greek mythology. It's one of the books that got me into Greek mythology. So I highly recommend the series, and I will be moving forward with the spin-offs and the continuations once I finish more series. You see a pattern here, because I see a pattern. It's a very unfortunate pattern, but I see it. The next book is one that I received from my friend Lisa for Christmas, and that is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. This was also a buddy read with my friend Sarah. But this is a YA high fantasy novel and a 2020 debut. Following young Kalia, who is a fire dancer in a magical circus show. She, however, doesn't feel like she quite belongs and wants to compete in the magical competition that is, I believe, like a few cities away. In order for her to kind of figure this out, she runs away and heads over and joins this magical competition, which there's more than meets the eye. And because this is a haul, I will be showing y'all pretty nice covers. The end pages are also very pretty, very simple. I really enjoyed this book. It's definitely a contender for one of my one of my favorites of 2020. I think that there were some instances where it was kind of but I also have a review in my, I believe, January wrap-ups. The next 3 books are present, and this time for my friend Ethel, my lovely, sweet Ethel. And that first book is the spell book, The Lost and Found by Moira Filey Doyle. This is a YA fabulism book, I believe, following witches in somewhere. But I have heard good things about this book. I know there's really good, I believe, bisexual rep in this book as well. And Moira Filey Doyle is apparently also one of those authors who everyone just loves reading their works from. So I'm super excited to read this book finally. It's been on my to-purchase TBR for a hot minute, so hopefully I get to this sometime this year and I love it. I think this might be one of the books that I wait until spooky season. The next book I received is also for my friend Ethel, like I said before, and that is Macbeth by William Shakespeare. This is one of the, I believe, Pelican Shakespeare editions. No, it's Penguin. It's one of the Penguin Classics editions. I love these covers for Penguin for Shakespeare's just because some of the like original covers are kind of ugly with like weird men on it or whatever. And like some of the more artistic leather-bound ones are hard to find, but I find this is like a nice simple way talking about the book without really going Wah! And I really enjoy it. I'm also hoping to collect the rest of these editions for Shakespeare just because, like I said, it's a really simplified and like minimalist kind of description of Shakespeare. It's just aesthetically pleasing as well, so here's hoping I can collect more because I have not a lot, but a handful of Shakespeare books that are like more artistic, which I do love and I adore. And I wish I could display it all, but like the minimalist versions are also just gorgeous. And the last book I got from Ethel for Christmas. But the last book is After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is another one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's backlisted works, one of her romance novels, her contemporary romance novels. This follows a couple who is basically on the verge of a breaking point. They have had their wits end with their marriage, with each other, and they decide to take a year apart. Lauren, the girl who's in the relationship, decides to kind of explore herself and figure things out and question this concept of monogamy, as well as Ryan. And it brings about all these questions in terms of monogamy and fidelity, and I'm really excited to read this book because I don't read a lot about contemporary novels, at least, where they talk about the concept of polyamory. About like polyamorous relationships or open relationships where it is a very like equal footing and everyone agrees to it or doesn't agree to it, or how to kind of navigate that scenario. So I'm super excited to get into this book and I hope I enjoy it like I have enjoyed her other works. The next book is a cover by, because I already own this book, and that is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. This is a YA kind of, I want to say contemporary, with some sci-fi elements in there, following young Aaron Soto, who is trying to find happiness in his life. He's been very depressed since his father's suicide, and he's been trying to find happiness since then. However, while he's trying to find happiness and contentment with his girlfriend Genevieve, he finds himself being drawn to Thomas, who is a new kid on the block. And things happen. As well as this backdrop of the Lateo Institute, which can go ahead and take certain memories from you and basically change your entire personality and change your entire outlook on life. One of my favorite books. I talk about this book so much, and like when I found out that there was going to be a deluxe version that was released with a new cover and featuring Aaron and a new chapter, I bought it. Without hesitation, I like ran to the store and bought it. Super excited. Trigger warnings for this book though. Like I said, there is suicide, there is a hate crime in here, there is violence, depressive thoughts, suicidal thoughts, as well as homophobia. So please be wary when you go into this. This is a very heavy book on all these things, and I wouldn't consider it an LGBT book that has a conventional happy ending, if that makes sense. The next 3 books were birthday presents from Andrea and Lisa, and I honestly forgot who got me who, but the first one is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is her latest work and written in prose. written in verse following these two young sisters who don't know they exist and live on separate countries but find out after their father dies in a plane accident. Now this is where they kind of try to come together and come to terms with the fact that their father, whom they idolize in their own way, isn't the person that they grew up thinking he was. I love this book. This was a favorite of 2020 of mine. I love Elizabeth Acevedo's writing. Highly recommend her if you guys haven't. Even if you don't read prose, I suggest you pick up the audiobook because the audiobook is like amazing. And you know, for research purposes, we're just gonna peel back the jacket and show the nice lovely top underneath. And then I believe the back also has something. Yes. So I highly recommend this book if you haven't, and I cannot wait to see what Elizabeth Acevedo is putting for her fourth book. The next one from these two lovely ladies is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a YA contemporary novel written in prose this time. This is her only book written in prose thus far, following young Emily, who is a teen mom who is graduating soon and is trying to find a nice middle ground where she could comfortably raise her child while also reaching for her dreams of culinary school. Highly recommend. Another I wouldn't say it's a new favorite of mine just per se, because I did have my issues with it, but it is one of my favorites. I love her writing, and you can literally tell how Elizabeth Acevedo's ability to write poetry translates into her prose. And you know, again, for future references. And I also will definitely be trying the recipes that are in this book, because she does provide some recipes and like they sound kind of yummy, so wish me luck. And the last Elizabeth Acevedo themed book is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This follows young Xiomara, who is kind of growing into herself, both emotionally, mentally, and physically. She's finding that men are kind of giving her weird looks. She doesn't really know how to understand her mother and this really strong attachment to Catholicism, or yeah, I believe Catholicism, or at least some religion involving the god deity, as well as trying to understand her budding feelings for a boy that she does not want, and her wants to become a poet. This is all written in prose, as I said, not in prose, in verse. I read this first via audiobook, and I have to give this a reread soon, but I highly recommend this book. It's such a great read, and it's so good. It's such a chef's kiss, and I relate to Xiomara's plight in certain aspects on so many levels. The next book in this haul, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's actually the third book to a series, and that is Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the third book, as I said, to stalking Jack the Ripper series, following young Audrey Rose and her love interest as they go from Eastern Europe to America on this famous yacht where there's a circus performing, all involving Houdini. This is not my favorite out of the quartet. I need to finish the series, but it's not my favorite of the quartet. I have mentioned this in my wrap-up. Not my favorite. Also, I know I haven't been mentioning trigger warnings for these books, but if I do forget, they will either be popped up on the screen or they will be mentioned down below in the description. Sometimes I do forget, especially with so many books. I've already reached my 20-minute mark, so I do apologize. The next book is a book that I am hauling, but there is a high chance it might be involved in a haul in the future. And that is Something to Talk About by Meryl Wilsner. This is an adult contemporary novel following these two young women, Jo, who is a powerhouse Chinese-American actress turned producer, and her assistant Emma, who works as assistant. When Jo takes Emma to a red carpet event to kind of avoid some unnecessary talks about her career, Emma makes Jo laugh and the media goes wild. In order for them to kind of figure out how to traverse this, they then begin to enter a fake relationship. This is my last read of 2020. It was an okay read. It was okay read. It's very middle of the road. Nothing too spectacular, nothing too weird. I will say though, there is trigger warnings for this book: mild homophobia, sexual harassment, I think some like groping. So be wary of that. But just be wary of it if you guys aren't. But it's not like super in your face either. It's instances that happen, if that makes sense. The next book is one that I've won at a giveaway recently. Thank you to Andrew for hosting the giveaway. Well, not as chaotic as mine. But that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sands. This is a YA contemporary novel following these young two boys. That's all I know. And it's gay. And it's getting a sequel. So that's all I know. It's one of those books that I like mean to buy and read, but like with everything else coming out, it like doesn't pop up on shelves, so therefore I'm not reminded of it as much. But I did win the giveaway, so now I own it, and which means I can read it, which means yay. This is my last gift from 2020. It was a Christmas present from Andrew. But that is Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the last Taylor Jenkins Reid book in this haul, I hope. But this follows young Elsie Porter, who is recently married to young Ben, and 9 days after their very quick marriage and elopement and dating life in general, he takes his bike out to go to the store to pick up some cereal for Elsie and gets hit by a car and dies. Obvious trigger warnings for death of a spouse, death of a loved one, grieving, depression. And in this time where she's supposed to be grieving and finding hope, she meets Ben's mother, who does not even know Elsie existed, who does not even know that they were married. And during this time, they kind of have to come together with their own grief and help each other out of this very dark hole that life has kind of put them in, as well as questions of what it means to be in love with someone and how you can accurately measure whether or not you love someone. Love this book. Highly recommend it. Such a good read. It made me cry, and I have a lot of feelings on it, but I did mention it in, I think, my January wrap-up. The next book is one that I recently purchased, and that is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is an adult high fantasy novel following young Cal, who is one of the few travelers who could travel between dimensions and into different Londons. That's all you guys really need to know. Like I said, he's one of the few ones, and there's different forms of Londons where magic is available and where magic is not available. This is the second book. I'm buttering this, I think, with Kate. Gotta check in with her by the end of this week, and I'm hoping that I'm going to enjoy it. I wasn't too sure on on A Darker Shade, just because it felt kind of middle of the road for me, but I'm hoping Gathering of Shadows will work out in the better. It seems like it seems like most people seem to enjoy the second book, but you know, who knows. The next book is one that I'm not entirely sure I've hauled yet, and that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I'm pretty sure I haven't hauled this yet, but who knows. This follows young Yadriel, who is trying to get his family to accept his gender. In an attempt to prove himself to be a real brujo, he ends up summoning the spirit of the dead bad boys in his high school. There he kind of has to figure things out, and that's all I know. I tried reading this for Trick or Treat-a-thon last year, and I kind of came up a little short because, like a dummy, I chose really thick books. The next book is the first of a trilogy, I believe, and that is The Wolf Queen of Oreñaro by K.S. Veloso. This is the first book in the Bitch Queen trilogy or series, following young Talien, who is trying to put her country back together after her coronation night, where her father is then killed and her husband leaves her, leaving them with a 10-year-old son, leaving her. In her attempt to try and fix this broken marriage for her son, and her son specifically, she finds herself kind of lost in this world that she doesn't really know how to maneuver around, and figures out exactly why there are so many assassination attempts going on for her. I love this book. This was a favorite, I believe, of 2020 of mine. Cannot wait to pick up The Falcon of Iquesar, and I'm hoping that I love it as much as I love this one. But I definitely will not be reading the sequel for a read-a-thon anytime soon. The next book is another gift. Yeah, it's a gift from my friend Sam, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is an adult sci-fi, science fiction. This follows multiple point of views regarding this kind of devastated world that has every few decades or so has a new season, which is a new devastation that comes against the land. And in order to kind of prevent it, they breed these humans who have these abilities to kind of help control it. And it follows this young woman as she tries to travel throughout this world to bring her family back together. I enjoyed the series. I enjoyed this first book. I mean, I will be picking up the next of the series, but I'm not in the biggest rush. It's a good book, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was the book that kept my attention very well. So we'll be picking up the next book when, I do not know, but we will see. The next book is an anthology. A friend found this at, at our local secondhand bookstore, and she knows I've been trying to engage more Filipino authors. And this is Monstrous by Leslie Tenori. Like I said, an anthology of short stories following these Filipinos in different parts of the world, one's in LA, one's in Believe in the Philippines. that's all I really need to know. I've been meaning to pick up this book for a while, and I'll probably be picking it up for April. So we'll see how this goes, because I have about, I think, like an 8-hour car ride in the beginning of April. So might as well just crank out an anthology. The next 2 books are part of a series, I believe a trilogy, and that is The Beautiful and the Damned by Renee Adjei. This is a YA historical fantasy following young Celine, who runs away from Paris to New Orleans. And there she finds herself getting lost in this very dark and dreary world where there are murders happening, and it, you know, centers around that world. I read this for Trick or Treat-a-thon last year. Loved it. One of my favorites for 2020. I picked up The Damned a couple months ago, and I think I will be adding that to the line of books I'll be reading for the spooky months. The next book is one that is going to cause a bit of controversy in my group chat, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is an gothic horror novel following a young girl trying to find her cousin in, I believe, Mexico. Yes, the Mexican countryside. I say this is going to cause controversy because my roommate, who gave me this book when she was done reading it, because she enjoyed it but did not see herself picking it up for reread in the future, gave it to me. She enjoyed it. My friend TB, who's like, I feel like when we read books, our tastes and thoughts typically do match up, read this and loved it, and then everyone else in the group chat who did read it did not seem to enjoy it as much. I'm gonna give this book a shot. I might try to read this for spooky season. We will see. I'm excited. I love me a good gothic horror, which I feel like if you don't really read or haven't read a lot of gothic horrors, it might be a little difficult to understand that, to like really get immersed in any kind of gothic lit. So very excited to read it. I'm hoping that mine and TB's tastes line up in this situation again, and I will enjoy it. The next book is one that I'm planning for a video series that I need to get started on in the near-ish future, and that is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This was a recommendation from Sarah, lovely Sarah, and I don't know a lot about it, only that there are lesbians in gothic horror. It seems like there's some gothic horror in here, there are lesbians, and some weird academic situations. I will be explaining more of why I bought this book on Sarah's recommendation probably in a couple months. I have a video series idea that I want to do that I've been too scared to do, but I've been meaning to do, so I just gotta get down and get into it. So very excited to read this in the near future. It looks super creepy and interesting. Ooh, are those moths or bees? I can't tell. Ooh, there's like an embossed like little thing. Okay. Yeah, so I'm excited to get into this when that happens. I do not know, but I will let you guys will be the first to know. And by that I mean because I will be doing a video on it. This is another book I'm not entirely sure that I have hauled, but if I did haul it, you'll know. But if I haven't, then now it is hauled. And that is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This is Angie Thomas's sophomore novel following young Bree, who wants to follow in her father's footsteps and become an underground rapper and make it big. However, she finds that her words as she's rapping people don't accept the messages the way that she wishes that they would. This also causes some tension because as she's trying to become big, it's kind of sped up with this kind of weird feeling that her family is struggling and she wants to also help support them. Highly recommended. It's such a good book. I enjoyed it. I did have my issues with it though, but like I said, I enjoy it and I cannot wait to pick up Concrete Rose. When that happens, I do not know, but I'm probably going to pick it up in the near future. So close but so far. Again, another book I'm not entirely sure if I hauled. I'm pretty sure I haven't hauled this yet because I was looking for this back in, I think like July, like August, July. So here's hoping. But that is Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Rebay. This is a YA contemporary novel following young Jay as he kind of just wants to coast by through his senior year of high school before he attends his colleges. He doesn't exactly know what he wants, but he knows college is kind of like what everyone does. Before he can do this, he hears news that his cousin June has been shot by the police, and there he tries to figure out exactly what had happened and why his cousin seemed to have gotten mixed up in this very terrifying situation that's currently happening in the Philippines right now, where there is a war on drugs and people are being shot in the streets for even being like suspected of being involved in drugs. So he travels to the Philippines to try and find out, and there he is left with more questions than answers. I read this toward the end of the year and I really enjoyed it. I have, I think, a full-length review for this book, so if I remember to leave things in the description, I will leave this in the description. We have reached the last book on this really long haul that I didn't think it would even take this long. It's already another 20 minutes. And that is Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This came out like a week ago. I'm almost done. But this is the continuation of The Last Hours, the first book being Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is set in Edwardian London and follows the children of the Infernal Devices. Here we find young Cordelia Carstairs traveling from, I want to say Paris. From Paris to London to avoid the scandal that her father is bearing down on his family. As she's here, she reunites with her old childhood friend Lucy and her old childhood crush James Herondale. And things ensue and there's a lot of smut. Not a lot of smut, but you know, Cassie smut. She teases you like a terrible lover. But I'm almost done with this book. I have a reading vlog that will be coming up hopefully this week. Well, definitely this week. It's gonna come before this video, so yeah. But yeah, very happy to have this book. Super happy to have read through it, and like this is the most satisfying tab situation that I've got going on. But that is it for the books that I read. That is it for the books that I purchased between June 2020 to March 2021. Will I learn my lesson and not wait basically a year before I haul more books? Probably not. But if you guys have read any of these books or would like me to do a full review on them if I have not read them already, leave those down below. Until next time, hit like, subscribe, comment, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week. And if not, hopefully next week is better for you. Bye!